All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. It's Morgan here at Jotform. Welcome to today's webinar, where I'm going to be talking about our latest release, version 2.0 of Encrypted Forms. Enabling encryption protects your forms and data, and with this release, we've improved the level of security and the ease of use. In our session today, I'm going to be talking a bit about why security matters. I'll be walking you through a demo of how to enable Encrypted Forms 2.0. And of course, we have some time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions, I know some of you already found that Q&A. You can drop those questions into the Q&A at any time. We did also get a couple of questions in registration that came up a lot. So I imagine some of you are going to ask the same questions today, but we'll go through some of those questions as well. Last housekeeping item, I am going to, I forgot to record. So I'm going to go ahead and record today's session and we can talk more. I will tell you more at the end about how to access the session after the fact. There we go. Now we are recording and you'll be able to access this later. All right. So before we get into the how, let's talk about why encryption is important. If you're not already thinking about data security, you should be. A recent IBM report showed that the average cost of a security breach last year was nearly $4.5 million, and over a third of organizations have been affected by some kind of malware attack. Another study showed that remediation for attacks in 2021 averaged $1.85 million. So generally speaking, we're talking a huge expense to a lot of organizations, as well as the loss of customer trust and other consequences. So we know that Jotform users span the range from large corporations through small business owners and individuals and other organizations. So some of you may be thinking, okay, but I'm not a part of a large company that's responsible for a ton of sensitive client information. And that may be true for a lot of you, but data breaches can affect anyone, anywhere. Most of us have been a part of a data breach as customers. In fact, last year alone, 422 million people in the United States were affected by data breaches. We're doing whatever we can, but we want to make sure that you're doing what you can as well. And however you use Jotform, you're collecting information from someone or somewhere, and it's important to do what you can to protect that data. One of the keys to minimizing the risk of security threats is to take protective action in advance, for example, by encrypting your forms. I'm going to use a definition from TechTarget here of what encryption is. I found an article from TechTarget that explained, it was sort of an encryption primer, explained encryption in pretty plain, easy to understand language. I will be linking to that in the resources at the end of our session today if you'd like more background or want to learn more about encryption. But TechTarget's definition of encryption is that encryption is the method by which information is converted into secret code that hides the information's true meaning. By doing so, encryption protects data both while it's just hanging around out there and while it's being transmitted, and it's a really common practice in a variety of spaces. For example, if you shop online or use an ATM, data like your PIN is undoubtedly scrambled by encryption for whatever journey it's taking so that no person or system can easily detect what your PIN is. End-to-end encryption, like we're using here at Jotform, keeps your data confidential until the receiver uses some sort of method to decrypt that data. And in this case, that user or the end user is you. So you're the receiver of the data. Let's talk about what's new with Encrypted Forms in our 2.0 version. So with Encrypted Forms 2.0, data is protected by setting an access code on a form-by-form basis. This is more secure than our previous version of Encrypted Forms, which used an account-based key. So that meant that all forms under a single account owner could be decrypted with a single key. This is also more security than you'll find with any other form builder out there. Also new with 2.0 is the way you encrypt your data. So now, in addition to more security, you do that encryption with an access code rather than downloading and storing an account key. Having to download and store a key left you unable to access data if you lost the key, as well as left your data vulnerable to the possibility of somebody else finding that key. So 2.0, in essence, provides more data protection while also being easier for you to manage. All right, almost ready for the demo here, but I did want to close some slides with just a few things for you to be aware of if you are considering using encryption on your forms. So first, I just mentioned that with a key, you had to know where the key was in order to decrypt your data or your data was lost. That is not changing. So if you do lose your access code, there's nothing we can do to help you recover your data. However, access codes, generally speaking, are easier to manage. You can use a password you won't forget, or more likely use a password manager along with all of the other passwords that you have to remember for everything these days. So you do have that option. Another thing to note is that there are some Jotform products and features that are not compatible with encrypted forms. And that's because since your data can only be decrypted by you on your own devices, there's no way for the system to process the data as it moves through the system or decrypt the data as it moves through the system, which would be necessary for a number of products and features within Jotform. So products like Jotform Sign and approvals rely on data sending data through the system. And other features like third-party integrations require data to be shared. So things like that are not compatible with form encryption. While they are not, if you are planning to use some of those in your workflow, third-party integrations that you absolutely need, or you're using approvals or Sign or a couple of the other things, we do, even though you can't use Encrypted Forms 2.0 with those, we do have some other recommendations for providing a little bit more form security, like access code protecting your form itself and making your forms private. I'm about to go into the demo for form encryption, but I will briefly point those two features out as well. All right, and on that note, let's go out into our demo. So those of you who have attended webinars are probably very familiar with my 30-second overview of Jotform. Starting the demo here, logged into my account on my Forms page. This is where you land when you log into Jotform. And here I can access and use any of my active forms. I can create new forms with the orange button here. And this menu up here next to the Jotform logo is a navigation menu that I can use to navigate throughout the system. In the case of form encryption, I'm going to just stay here in the form builder, and I'm going to be using this demo feedback form. When I hover over it or click on the checkbox next to it, you can see that I get all of the options of what I can do with this form. And in this case, I'm going to click Edit Form to open it in the form builder. So now we have this open in the form builder. You can see that here. Let me just go ahead and turn my camera off so that I don't block anything here. So the form builder is where you'll build or edit your forms, from form design, adding fields, all the way through any settings that you need to apply to the form overall. And for encryption, we're going to go to this settings menu along the orange bar at the top here. The first tab of the settings menu here are your general form settings, and that's exactly where we'll find form encryption. So you can see that right here at the the bottom of this white section here. It's tagged with new, so you can easily see that this is a new feature. I wanted to highlight it in that way. There is also a button or a link here to learn more. That brings you to the landing page for encrypted forms. So if you want more information while you're setting this up, this goes through the pros of why this is important, goes through setup, has a lot of visuals to aid whatever information you need to learn from here. So this is a great resource. I will link to this at the end of the session as well, but that is there for your reference. All you need to do to enable encryption is to toggle this from no to yes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that. Then you'll have to verify that it's actually you in your account. So you'll either type in your account password, or if you're using G Suite, you'll verify in that way. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now I've verified that it's me. The last step here is to set up the access code that I'll use to access this information. There is a little eye icon here that you can turn on and off to see what password you're entering. Now, since we cannot retrieve the data, there's nothing that anybody can do for you if you lose this access code. You might want to turn that on just so you can make sure that you're entering the password you think you're entering. So I'm going to go ahead and use encrypt, T exclamation mark, and that will be my password. And I can always hit that button again to hide it. The last thing you'll need to do here is to click the checkbox confirming that you understand that if you lose the access code, you cannot view form submissions, and then hit enable encryption and you're all set. So you see form encryption is enabled. And now this toggle is shows us bright orange yes. If at any point that you want to turn encryption off, all you need to do is toggle that off and confirm. And then if you want to toggle it back on at any point, you'll do the same thing. You need to verify that it's you and go through that process again. But you will not need to set the password again. So you'll use the same password that you initially applied. So in this case, my capital E encrypt exclamation mark password. So there we go. One other thing I want to point out here is that if at any point in the future, a year from now, you're watching this webinar and you don't see Encrypt Form Data right here, there is a show more options button right here, which opens up your full menu of form settings. So if at some point in the future, it's not showing up right here at the top, you'll find it somewhere else on this page. Just scroll through or, Control F for a search there for encryption. All right, so at this point, encryption is turned on. That was all I needed to do. So now if I go back to my build tab and look at this form, you'll see that at the bottom here, there is a encrypted form badge added. Same thing as well. If I go into publish and I open this up as if I were a user looking at this form or filling out this form, you'll see that same badge at the bottom here, encrypt form right there. And now let's pretend that we are somebody filling out this form. So we'll say, great job, fill out the name and email address and submit. So you'll notice as I submit for just half a second here that all of this data is going to get blurry. That's kind of part of the encryption things, and you saw it kind of getting encrypted there. Now, I, as the account owner, typically would receive a notification email that lets me know that somebody is submitted to my form. If you have been using Jotform, you might be familiar with those emails. And let's bounce over to my email here. So you can see that I've received a notification email. So these emails by default will show all of your form fields along with responses that have come in. So every time somebody responds, you get a notification email. Now, in this case, you're not seeing that data. And that's because, again, with encryption, there's no way to share that data through email without decrypting the data. So it does not appear here. Instead, I'm being directed to view submission here by clicking on this button, and that will take me to the inbox for this form where I can view the submission. Inbox is something that gets set up automatically when you create a form. So Inbox is a way for you to view all of your form responses in an email format. And as I enter my key here, we'll see that I can now see that submission. I think it's taking a couple of seconds for the actual full set of data to come through, but you would eventually see the full submission here now that I've entered my access code to access that. So again, rather than getting all of that data directly in your email, you'll be directed to log into the inbox to do that. Same thing as well, if I wanted to access this data from my account. So if I wanted to see my full inbox from here, I can come back to my My Forms landing page here. Now we see that same demo form that I set up with a key icon here showing me that this is encrypted, and I can click inbox. I should be asked for my password. There we go. So here's my access code to access this data. And now we can see all of the form submissions that have been sent over from this to this form. Additionally, tables get created as well when you create a form, and tables collect all of your form responses in a spreadsheet or a database format. So same thing, if I click on this, you can see the submissions button here. And once again, I should be asked for my password in order to access these the data here. So once again, I enter my password, and there we go. I have my full set of data here in the table. All right, so that's everything I wanted to show with encryption. Now, I did mention those couple of other features that are still available, even if you cannot use encryption with your workflow. And those are protecting the form itself. So first, in the settings menu, that same show more button at the bottom here, and show more options, and I can search for it should be password protection. It's right there. So I can enable password protection and just set the password. So let's say we want to use the same one. Once I do that, we'll see that a password is set. And now if I try to access this form as a user, I will need to enter that password. So this password would need to be shared with anybody that you would want to fill out the form. The other option is here on the Publish tab itself in settings here. You have some options over access to the form itself. So by default, forms are set up as public forms and they're available to anybody. But you can also set company access, which you can do with your email domain, or you can set this to a private form. So in that case, this form is only available to people who are invited to fill out the form. So those are, again, 2 additional protections that you have for the forms itself. And you can enable those if you are using encryption as well. All right, I'm going to close this out back at the slides here, and then we'll go to some questions. I can see that we already have a number of questions come in. So just closing with those resources that I mentioned, I'm going to go from the bottom up here. So first we have that What is Encryption Tech Target article at the bottom. So again, a great resource if you need a primer, need a little bit more information about what encryption is and what it does and how it all works. That is the last link here. That landing page that I showed is just jotform.com/encrypted-forms. So again, that gives you an overview of all of the features of encrypted forms, how it all works, and includes a lot of visuals to go along with it. And then the last resource here is an excellent blog, as per usual, by my colleague Chris, introducing encrypted forms. Chris gives a thorough overview of how to set this all up, including screenshots. And then at the very end of that article, Chris talks more in depth than I covered today about what is not compatible with encrypted forms and some other options of what you can do to still continue to protect your forms on your own, on top of the protection that's built into Jotform. So if you'd like a little bit more information about that, I absolutely recommend reading the article. And again, that information specifically is at the bottom of the article. All right, so I'm going to open it up the Q&A now. If you have any additional questions, feel free to drop them in now. Okay. So a couple of questions I can see already that there are a lot of questions that, again, did come up in the registration. So I'm going to try to go through those. A couple of people asking about sign. So again, Jotform sign is not compatible with encrypted forms because basically the system would have to send data through the system and it can't do that without being decrypted. But you can use the signature widget. So if you do need a signature and want to sort of manage that externally, you can still use the signature widget. I see a couple of people ask that question. So hopefully that helps you there. You're going to hear me say this a lot over the next couple of minutes, but if you do have additional questions about that, I would recommend getting in touch with our support team. They are far more technically versed in the product than I am. I know a lot and they know a lot more. So if you're having any issues with sign or questions about sign versus the sign widget, do feel free to get in touch with them. It's jotform.com/contact. All right, so I see a couple of people asking about credit cards. I'm not surprised to see that because that was by far the most popular question that came in during registration. So I see Tammy, Tiffany, you're asking about that. I think a couple other people here asking about credit cards. So there are a couple of things to note here. And I actually wrote down notes for this so I could make sure to cover the whole thing. So first, you can accept payments with Jotform using a third-party platform, and you can use a third-party platform for payments, a third-party payment processor with Jotform and still use encryption. So you can accept payments and credit card information using one of those payment processors. You cannot do that just in Jotform as a field. You can't ask for credit card information. It's against our terms of service, and it's related to our payment, our PCI compliance, and what we do to protect data. So you cannot, even using encrypted forms, just ask for a credit card number. Again, you can use payment processor for that. And there are a couple of payment processors that allow you to collect credit card numbers and bill later. I believe what you would look for would be authorization, something about authorization in the gateway settings of your payment processor. It's not available on all of them, but it is available on some of the big ones, especially. So again, if you do have that question, if you are wondering about payments, the summary is you can accept payments using a payment processor. You cannot ask for credit card information just as a field. But I would, again, recommend that you get in touch with support for more information about that as well. Can we change the password? I don't think so, because if you turn encryption off and then turn it back on, it's using the same password. So I don't believe you can change the password once you set a password for encryption. Okay, a couple of other questions about, another related question to that. Do you need a different access code for each form created? Not necessarily. You can use the same access code if you want, but you will set that up on a form by form basis. So, if I wanted to set up another form, I do the same process. I could use the same password again, not as secure to use the same password every time, but, theoretically you could. Okay, a couple of other questions about other sensitive data that's not credit card information, which again, not surprised about. That also came up a lot during registration. So you can collect sensitive information like social security numbers. Again, encryption, using the form encryption is that's something you would need to do for data that is like that. There are there is some information in our terms of service about that. So if you are thinking about collecting sensitive information like social security numbers, I would recommend reviewing your terms of service agreements. Also, again, support is a great resource for that. They can give you far more information about that. There are some other things you need to do. Like I think you need to add a checkbox for your end user to confirm that they know that they're sharing this data. So again, you can do that, but there are a couple steps you need to take, and support can help you with that. All right, so I see a couple of questions about cost and license. Well, there are a lot of questions. Thank you all. I hope I can get through at least most of them. And again, if I don't get to you, support is a great resource. You're also welcome to email me individually, morgan@jotform.com. And if I can't answer your question directly, I will share that with support and ask them to follow up with you quickly, but they usually respond pretty quickly, generally speaking. So to go back to cost and what accounts this is available on. So Encrypted Forms 2.0 is available on all Jotform licenses, and it's included as part of the license. Any restrictions would just be whatever the terms of your license are. So that's, if you're using a free account, you have up to 5 forms, through paid accounts. So there is no additional cost there. It's included with whatever you're paying or not paying for Jotform. Okay. I also see a couple of questions about, a couple of questions about upgrading from the first version of Encrypted Forms. So I'm trying to scan through as many of them as I can right now and kind of summarize what a few of you are asking. Okay, so with regards to if you're using Encrypted Forms already, the first iteration of Encrypted Forms, you don't, what you would need to do to upgrade to Encrypted Forms 2.0 would be to go into your account settings and turn encryption off on your account level, since that's how it was set with the first version of Encrypted Forms. And then you would need to go into individual forms and add encryption on a form by form basis from there, using the way that I just showed you. How does this impact current form users? I don't believe there's any impact on current form users. So as you could see, I was able to turn encryption off and on and submit in the same way that I would normally submit. So there shouldn't be an impact on anybody submitting to your form. Okay, looks like a follow-up to the question about if you were using the first version, the first iteration of Encrypted Forms, will we need to recreate those or recreate existing forms? So no, as you saw, again, I was able to turn off encryption and turn it back on. If you have a form that already exists, you can turn on encryption at any time. So the key difference there would be that moving forward, you would need to enter your password to access that data. If we're using credit card widgets, that's not compatible. So if you are using, so I know in the intro, I mentioned that third-party platforms are not compatible with Encrypted Forms, but the exception there is for payment processors. So you can still continue to use a payment processor and use form encryption. Oh, there are so many questions. I'm so glad to see all this engagement. Thank you. I'm glad you guys are all very interested in this. Okay, so again, just skimming through these as quickly as I can. I do also see HIPAA coming up a lot. If you are handling PHI, we recommend you use a HIPAA Jotform license. There are a couple of reasons for that. If you're already an enterprise user, you can check in with your support person to learn more about that. But there are a number of differences between a HIPAA account and encrypted forms. So HIPAA account data is stored on a completely separate server that's intended just for HIPAA accounts. So that's one key difference. Also, with an enterprise license, you have a couple of things that go along with what you would need for HIPAA. So who is accessing your data and when. You get that with a HIPAA license that would not be compatible with encrypted forms. So encrypted forms is really built more for a single person. You have to enter a password, your password to log into encrypt your forms, and then the password. So it's really built for a single user. But if you work for an organization where multiple authorized people who need to access patient information are able to access patient information, that would really be more built for a HIPAA environment. So basically all that to say, if you do use, if you are working with PHI, if you are concerned about HIPAA, a HIPAA license, a HIPAA compatible license is your best option. And you can contact, again, support to learn more about that, or our sales team to learn more about that as well. I see a couple of people upset about not being able to receive credit card numbers. Again, that's really for security purposes. It's not a restriction that we have in place just because, just for the heck of it. And it is included in our terms of service for that reason. And it's because of, again, our compliance and the licensing that we have to be able to say that we have strict, we follow compliance protocols. So, we just can't have that information in the system. Can certain fields be encrypted and not the whole form? So no, using encryption, you're encrypting the entire form. If you would like to encrypt certain fields, that is something that you can do with a HIPAA compatible license. So again, I would recommend looking more into that, contacting support or sales to learn more about that. Okay, so somebody asking, Tiffany, you're asking about if support has a phone number or just chat. So we do not have a phone number currently, but there is chat, which you'll see pop up in your account, as well as you can send an email, and that would be jotform.com/support. You can send a message there. They generally respond very quickly. So in the live support, even faster than the email support. So that is your best option for support there. But again, you are welcome to email me as well if that's easier to remember. I'm Morgan at Jotform. And again, I can try to follow up with you myself. And if I can't, I will ask support to get in touch with you specifically. Does the feature encrypt data in transit or at the database level or both? So yes, it is for both. So your data is fully encrypted. I saw a related question asking about how easy it would be to reset the password if you forgot. So not easy. Again, we can't retrieve that data since it is encrypted within the system itself. Somebody asking about the password protection on the form itself. So the best method to provide the password to the person filling out the form, you can send it in any way that you would normally share that information. Sorry, I was trying to read another question at the same time. Anyway, you would share that information. I mean, probably don't want to send the form and the password in the same email, but a separate email or however you would normally share a password. All right, so I think I've gone through most of these questions. I know there are some of you with more specific questions that I haven't gotten to. So again, if you have additional questions, support is a great resource for you. Some of your questions may be answered in the resources that I have linked here on the screen. And you are, again, also welcome to get in touch with me directly as well. Morgan@Jotform. I'll plug my email address one more time. We do have another webinar next week about QuickBooks. So I imagine that there's some overlap with folks who would be interested in encrypting forms as well as QuickBooks. So you can find a link to that at jotform.com/webinars. You'll see that any upcoming webinars there as well, any additional upcoming webinars, as well as recordings of all of our past webinars. And on our YouTube channel, which you can find just at YouTube Jotform, you'll find links to all of our previous webinars, as well as all of the other videos that we've created, including shorter tutorials, release videos, etc., where you can learn all about Jotform. So I absolutely recommend that as well. I'm going to close this out for now, but thank you again so much for all of the questions. I'm really, really excited to see that so many of you are interested in this feature. And again, please continue to ask support or myself if you do have additional questions, and hopefully we will see you soon for the next one. All right. Thank you. Bye.